That's not how you pronounce it.
I know, but it's the closest thing I could find to get a song for this week's Salute to Takashi Miike. Welcome. This is the Fright Club podcast.
I'm Hope Madden.
And I'm George Wolf, and we're from madwolf.com. And I believe this is the first time we're picking just one director to spotlight?
Yep. We've been taking some advice from, especially on Twitter, the last several weeks about, who to focus on. Not necessarily a director, could also be an actor and actress. We have a recommendation for a producer even, but we started with Takashi Miike because...
he's so fine. Miike, he's so fine.
That's why. That's exactly why.
But no, you're right. There's some good stuff to discuss.
Yeah, well, he has 86 films.
Holy.
Yeah, I mean, he's got to be the most prolific director of all time. It's insane. It's insane how many, not all of them are horror films, but yeah, he has directed 86 films. He does, and
he's not that old.
No, he's 10 years older. He's like 55, 54. Yeah. He's born in
moly.
He does like 4 or 5 movies a year. It's insane. And actually several of the ones on our list today, they were originally filmed with the idea that they would go direct to video. They weren't going to be theatrically released at all.
Right.
And so that's kind of fun because the fact is, regardless of the fact that he just churns things out, I mean, he's a fascinating filmmaker. He's nuts.
Yeah, and some of those you talked about that were originally set to go straight to video were brought to the theaters by popular demand, and we'll get to that as we get into our top 5. But before that, let's say some thanks for the response from last week's Blame Canada episode.
That's right. We did get one. Our friend Neil McRobert at NACMAC, our Stephen King senior Stephen King correspondent. He's probably not going to be the only one. He was sorry that we didn't mention Pontypool.
Right, yeah.
And that one, it's funny to me that's got, it really does. It's got quite a cult following, that movie.
Not from you.
No, I don't care for it.
So there's your answer. That's why it didn't make the list. Hope does not care for that. And I haven't seen it, so I can't chime in on Pontypool.
You'll have to because it's about a radio DJ.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
man.
so Lance Henriksen is a radio DJ, so yeah. We've talked about before. I'm going to do a whole podcast one time, just radio DJ horror,
hey,
just for
here
you.
In the air chair in Canada's capital city, everybody. I will have to see that, but yeah, so you don't care for it, but a lot of people do, so...
And also John Dean, probably our longest-running Fright Club fan member. John Dean was really happy to see Cube on there, and he says it's one of his all-time favorite. It is a great one. Cube is such a great movie.
It is really good. So that was our Not Blame Canada, Praise Canada episode, and thank you for that. So also I got a plug that we've, just in a few days here, we've got our next Fright Club Live episode, which we're going to be taping our next podcast and showing the great movie, The Orphanage.
Oh my God, I love that
And that's going to happen this Wednesday, the 11th, at the Gateway Film Center in Columbus. So please come out if you're in the area. Not only a great movie, but we need you in the studio audience for some feedback as we tape the next podcast and talk about best Spanish language horror.
Yeah, that was, I actually just sort of narrowed down the list to our top 5 this morning, and it may be a top 6, top 5, because there are so many.
Fuzzy math.
Yeah, there are so many great ones to choose from.
Yeah. Also, we want to say hello and welcome to a new listener, Ben Daniels, who chimed in on Twitter, and you can always do that. We love it. We're at MaddWolf, MaddWolf, and he suggests David Lynch.
Yeah,
which
you know what? Some of the suggestions that we've gotten for a whole, like a filmmaker podcast, they're not exactly who I expected. I expected like Toby Hooper or Wes Craven or somebody like that. David Lynch, that's a great recommendation.
Very good. Yeah.
And then our friend Bridget Oliver is at Columbus, Kill, Columbus. Huge supporter. We love them. We love her. She's a nut. And she recommended Vincent Price, Barbara Crampton.
There you go.
And then, of course, she also just threw out there as a possibility because this woman has a giant crush on Oliver Reed.
She does. Okay, then. I'll go for,
Hey, can we do 5? So
Let him live.
You got The Brood, you got Burnt Offerings,
and can we also, while we're giving Bridget a shout out, we have to give a shout out because she dressed her little baby boy as Blackula.
Oh my God, it was
for
so
Halloween,
great.
and it was the greatest thing.
Oh my God, it was so great.
It was awesome. So I don't know if she put pictures on the Columbus Horror Facebook page. I hope so. People can check it out because, man, it was awesome.
It was great.
Nice salute to Blackula. So, all right, a lot of shout outs.
I love William Marshall.
Who, as we might have said before, trivia, turned up before his death on the Pee Wee Herman
King
show.
Of cartoons,
he was the king of cartoons.
I know.
Awesome. Fully formed career from Blackula to King of Cartoons. Yeah, the great William Marshall. So before we get to the actual not fuzzy math, real top 5 countdown, we've got a few that we want to mention Takashi Miike movies. A few of his what'd you say, 86, 89 movies?
86.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know. And so it was really hard to come up with just 5. And I wanted to keep it with just 5. I did, because you could just go on forever and ever and ever. But there are 4 movies that I just want to throw out there that you should check out. A couple of them are really recent, so it might be a while before you're able to get them. And a couple of them are older. And again, I mean, these are a little bit hard to get a hold of, but they're so incredibly worth it. And the thing about Miike is that his movies can be just batshit insane in a way that nobody else's can. Like, nobody, when it comes to just the insanity in film, nobody touches Miike. It's true. So I think that you need to check out his most recent one. It's called Yakuza Apocalypse. Yeah. It actually screened at the Gateway. It was in town. It's a mashup. It's a Yakuza vampire movie. And
so many of his with the Yakuza.
Yes.
The Yakuza is like the mafia.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So
the Japanese mafia films.
Yeah, Japanese.
And this one, they turn into vampires.
Nice.
And it's a bloody mess, of course. Another one, there are 2 sort of back-to-back that I'm going to recommend that are like high school horror. One is called As the Gods Will, and the other is called Lesson of Evil, or you might see Lesson of the Evil. The first one is As the Gods Will. It's sort of a battle royale kind of a thing. These kids are all locked into their homerooms, and they have to battle each other to survive.
All right.
And it's like, I know. And it's like it's these robot alien overlords that are making him do it, which is, what sets it apart. And then Lesson of Evil is it's like this handsome new young high school teacher comes to the school and then implements his own classroom management sort of strategy. There's a really high body count. Not a lot of bullies survive. I mean, it's brutal, but that's the thing about it. So
that's not on the No Child Left Behind list.
It is not. So As the Gods Will is one of those surreal, bizarre things. But Lesson of Evil, it's so darkly comical that you almost feel dirty for watching it. It's just and then another one, and I'm gonna go out there and say this one might be the weirdest of all the Takashi Miike movies. Visitor Q. So like everything that we'll bring up in the next 5 movies, they're all also in Visitor Q. Like it's a family dysfunction film that just sort of kicks taboos right in the face. It's insane.
Wow.
It's so weird.
Okay, so those are a few that didn't make the top 5, but definitely worth a check. Visitor Q is from 2001, Lesson of Evil 2012, As the Gods Will 2014, and then Yakuza Apocalypse, that came from just last year. So some to check out before we start counting down, and we'll do that right now with Miike's contribution to the compilation film 3 Extremes from 2004, and it's called The Box. Now, this one, although it's not a Yakuza film, it's got a lot of elements that you'll keep seeing in Miike movies, specifically dreams.
Yeah.
And whether someone is dreaming or are they not dreaming. Is this real or not? And this short film, what is it, about 30 minutes, do you think?
Yeah, I think so, a little bit. Yeah, right around there.
About 30 minutes. Really takes that to the extreme. Because you're not sure. She wakes up, and then is she dreaming or not? And it has to do with a sibling rivalry, I guess, as the young girls are, would you call it, they're magician's assistants or acrobats? They're kind of like some sort of a magician, magic show, and they are young acrobats and gymnasts maybe, and part of their act involves them getting into boxes for the magician or the guy who's putting the show on.
I think you're right. This really looks like a Takashi Miike movie, and I think that he does a better job than most with the dream sequence, because you get the feeling she's never quite sure if she's sleeping or awake, and you as the audience, you certainly are never quite sure whether she's asleep or awake, whether what you're watching is a dream or is actually happening.
Yeah.
And it gives the whole thing a very surreal quality.
Very much so, and there's some great sequences, very beautifully shot.
Yeah.
Many of them against snow, and then there's fire. It turns out, without giving too much away, there's an accident that befalls one of the girls, and then when the other one grows up, has some issues looking back on that, dreaming about it, and then you have trouble figuring out what is real and what is not. And it's more subtle in its sort of taboo than a lot of his other, which are very much in your face, but it's still all there. Sort of sexual repression and incest and sort of body horror and it's all there. It's still but weirdly enough, it's kind of a lovely film. It's creepy, and they're twins in it, so I love that. Yeah, it is. It's not outright horrific, and it's not very bloody at all, but it is creepy.
Yeah, it's very creepy. And it's part of one of the reasons that it made this is because it's part of Three Extremes, which is maybe the best, short compilation horror movie ever. So Takashi Miike plus Fruit Chan and Dumpling, which is great. And then the great Chan-wook Park. So that's part of the reason. It's just, you got to watch that movie. Like if by any chance you haven't seen Three Extremes, you just need to see it.
Yeah, and this one, of all the Miike films that we're going to talk about, this one is the most, I don't know, would you say normal? I mean, it doesn't have that crazy, as you said, batshit angle to it at all.
No, yeah, I mean, it's surreal, which I think is a common element, but it's not absurdist in any way. There's certainly not a comical element to it, and it's not particularly bloody. So yeah, I think so. I mean, it's maybe one of the more dialed down options.
Yeah, but also one of the more, I think, as we just said a minute ago, one of the more beautifully shot.
Yeah, a little bit like that 13 Assassins, which is not a horror film, but is beautiful.
I love that.
I mean, it's horrific, but it's just so gorgeously filmed, and his use of color in both of those films is really amazing.
And it's got that, if you haven't seen 13 Assassins, my lord, I mean, the last 45 minutes, I think, of that movie is one extended battle scene.
It's amazing.
That will just blow your mind. I love that. So it's not on our list, not really what we're talking about here, not a horror movie, but man, if you haven't checked out 13 Assassins, especially if you're a fan of Miike, do that. So that's number 5, his contribution to Three Extremes, which, again, we recommend watching all three.
Absolutely.
From 2004, and his is the short film The Box. Moving on to number 4, one that we've mentioned a few times to my disdain, I guess. Although, you know what? We'll give it some due here. It's at number 4 from 2001, The Happiness of the Katakuris. I think when we've talked about this, it's come out of my dislike for the movie House.
Exactly.
Which this is better than House.
Oh, yeah.
But it's just really not my type of thing. It's nuts.
It is nuts. It's nuts in a fun and funny way. It's like The Sound of Music with an incredibly high body count. And, one of the things I love about this movie, so Miike, as we've said, 86 films. A lot of them are children's movies. A lot of them have musical elements to them. Of course, a lot of them are horror movies. And so this, to me, is just a mashup of those three things that he does really well.
Yeah.
He's just developed a tremendous style, and he really just grinds those together in this movie that is an absurdist comedy about, this group of losers, this family of losers who buys an inn, and because the street is about to be finished to the inn, and then they never finish the street, so then nobody ever comes to the inn. So then they finally get a guest, and the guest dies. And then it's, oh my God, bad luck. And so there's all this like, don't tell, what are we doing? Hide the body. And then other guests show up, and boy, guests shouldn't show up. There's just so much going on. There are so many musical sequences,
right.
There's a volcano, there's claymation. I mean, it is nutty, but it's super fun.
And incidentally, it's actually a remake or a re-envisioning of a South Korean movie from 1998 called The Quiet Family. Now that it has the same type of plot, but there's no songs and there's no claymation.
Less lunacy, I think.
Yeah, less lunacy. And then also the same basic story was redone again in 2003 in a movie called A Mysterious Murder. So the basic framework keeps getting redone, but not like this.
No, not at all.
This is done with songs and all the nuttiness. And you could look at it, I don't know if you feel this way, you could look at it as an overall parody of American cinema, really. I
could definitely see that. Certainly of like cloak and dagger thrillers. I mean, it's almost soap opera-like, the way everybody is trying to hide something from everybody else, and so everybody else is trying to find something out. I mean, it very much is soap opera-like in that just basic plot line, and then what he injects into it is so wild and absurd and hilarious and completely unpredictable.
And then they have that one little straight out callback to The Big Lebowski in the scene where, if you remember in the Big Lebowski, where Jackie Treehorn is getting he wrote down the message or the phone number on the little notepad.
Yeah.
And so how you do that, you scrape it with the side of a pencil so you just see what the indentation is. And then they do that in this movie, but it's not a message or a phone number that shows up on the page. So there's those real intentional markers to specific movies.
Yeah.
But you mentioned The Sound of Music. You definitely get that
vibe.
But I know some people may disagree, but I think the overall effect is you really get the feeling that it's just a kind of poking fun at the whole American experience in a lot of these movies.
It could be, or certainly having fun with it.
Yeah.
I don't see anybody making fun of The Big Lebowski. That would be crazy.
No, you're right, yeah. But just the overall things that pop up in American movies and TV a lot of times. So, but boy, he uses a lot of different ways to do it. We mentioned the songs, we mentioned the claymation, and just the overall nuttiness. So, and the movie's certainly, you could say cult favorite, couldn't you, with that?
I think so. I mean, I think it's one of his more underseen gems. But, those who have seen it, it's not like you're going to forget it.
No, I don't think so. And that is from 2001, The Happiness of the Categories. And that's at number 4 on the list, moving up to number 3. Are we amping up the batshit craziness?
A little bit, I think,
as we get each time. This is up one notch, number 3 from 2003. It's Gozu.
I love this movie. I love this movie so much. And that might make me, I can already hear in my head Bridget saying that there's something wrong with my head. Because if she thought that there's something wrong with me because I like Pin from last week, then this starts off a Yakuza movie. The Yakuza boss has gone sort of insane, and so the higher up bosses want one of his underlings to take him out. The underling, who's our main character, doesn't really want to, feels very conflicted about it, and then all of a sudden they're in this it's not a dream sequence, it's just this surreal nightmare. It's so dreamy. It has such a dreamy logic, like you just can't quite figure out what's going on. You can't quite leave town. You can't quite find the correct room in the inn where you're staying. And then, but oh my God, the sort of sexual imagery in this is wow, insane.
Now, this is one specifically that was intended for a straight-to-video release, but it got such a positive reaction at the Cannes Film Festival that they pretty much forced them to put it out in theaters because people just loved it.
Oh yeah, well, it's brilliant. I mean, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeously filmed, and it's not as if it's just this weird storyline that doesn't make any sense. Although, God help you if you try to make sense of it. There's something really sort of subconscious and primal and honest about, and that you don't want to admit that makes sense to you because the imagery is so wrong. I mean, there's a minotaur. There's a guy who dies by electric ass ladling.
Don't forget my favorite, that killer dog.
Oh my God.
That guy that he's swinging, and suddenly the dog has his tail is suddenly 3 times longer than it was when he started swinging it around.
Yeah.
That crazy dog. But this is one, probably much like many of the movies that we talk about in this podcast, if you can get the unrated version, because I think at least 5 minutes or so had to be trimmed, and 5 good minutes.
I would think so.
Had to be trimmed to get the R-rated version. So if you get the not unrated version,
if you don't see the entire adult man being birthed, then you've really missed something.
Yeah, and this one, you said try not to make sense of it, but there are those theories out there. I've seen people, or I've read people talk about how it's about coming to terms with your sexuality, maybe your homosexuality. Also, just a straight-up descent into hell.
Yeah, I can absolutely see that.
You can see that.
Yeah, I could totally see that.
Yeah, and I don't think he's in any rush to say which is right, or if anything is right. It's like, no, here it is.
Yeah.
And take for what you will. Because, I like that. What'd you call that? Electric ass ladling? That's new. But, it's just a crazy trip. Just a crazy head trip. Gozu from 2003. And that is just at number 3 in our Takashi Miike countdown. And we're getting to the top 2. And probably we get into these two. They're the top titles that come to mind when you bring him up.
Yeah.
And number 2 is from 2001, Ichi the Killer. So 2001, that's the same year that he did Happiness of the Categories.
Right.
These are different movies.
Yes, they are.
It's got crisscrossing storylines, really starting with Kakihara, how do you pronounce it?
Yeah.
And he's the guy with they call it the Glasgow smile or the Chelsea smile, which apparently is in those mafia circles marking of your enemies. And it's nasty.
It is nasty,
isn't he? So his boss is dead, but he believes that he may be kidnapped. So Kakihara starts kidnapping those who might be to blame torturing them pretty outlandishly.
Yeah, you remember the scene where the guy is hanging from hooks, just like all of those hooks up and down his back.
Yeah.
And you know he didn't do anything. And Kakihara thinks maybe he didn't do anything, but he doesn't care because he's really a big S&M guy.
Yeah, yeah. And that, by the way, that scene, what I read, took like 10 hours to set up.
Oh, my God.
Just to set it up. So then it becomes, he's becomes a sort of a god to Kakihara, Ichi does, who really, really likes to be abused. And you get to that, another theme in a lot of Miike movies, this pain is to be, elevated to a certain place, almost like Martyrs, almost like the theme of Martyrs. Beautiful pain, I guess you would say, runs through this movie as well. And he pulls that rung out from under you because basically every person in the film is seriously deranged.
Yeah.
That's how Miike has set this movie up.
Because I think, so you got Kakihara, and you know that he's bad. I mean, he's clearly bad. He's a bad person. And screwed up. But, and then his quest to find his boss is not just loyalty. It's because the boss could beat him up better than anybody else. I mean, there's something really unseemly and weird about it. And he looks, he's got the split open face,
right.
and he's got the blonde hair. He just looks like a tough guy. Well, then you got Ichi, who is the killer, and he behaves like a child. He's got like the big sad face all the time, and you really want to feel for him. You sort of do feel for him, and then in the end, he's as bad a human. He's and it's just because he's just sort of wired wrong. It's not malice, but he's easily confused. He makes the wrong decisions all the time. You know what I mean? He's our hero, but he's the worst person in the movie.
Well, and here's the wild theory about this movie: are Ichi and Kakihara the same person?
Sure, right?
Yeah, and
maybe
not. But that is the often topic of conversation with this movie. And also, you know how a couple times you've mentioned that when you received the movie The Woman in the mail, it came with a barf bag.
Yep.
Well, they passed out barf bags when this movie debuted at the Toronto International Film Festival. They passed out barf bags.
Wow.
So nice. And also another little tidbit that you'll appreciate in the intro, that's real semen.
Oh!
By the way. You didn't expect that, did you?
I didn't. Oh,
and this
authenticity.
And this one, it stays crazy to the very end because you remember the end credits.
Yeah.
Remember how the end credits start zipping all around? They go up and down and back and sideways. So that's, I guess, maybe another, if you want to read into it, another way of saying you may not be seeing what you think you're seeing.
Yeah.
I guess. It's definitely lends credence to that if you watch it going in thinking that, okay, am I going to try to develop a theory of whether Kakihara and Ichi are the same person or not? You can start that way and try to pick things out, or just let it go. Just let it wash over you, so to speak.
Yeah. If another director were to try some of these things, I think they would come off as gimmicky, and nothing he does ever does feel gimmicky.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel contrived. It just feels like he just has a wild imagination, like really like nothing else. I mean, the carnage in this movie, and again, I mean, like in so many of his movies, the perverse sexuality in this film, which he explores without judgment, but he certainly doesn't. He doesn't encourage it. He doesn't. I mean, it's nastiness. It's a lot of nastiness going on here. And then the other thing that I think makes it really memorable is, again, just this sense of humor that almost makes you feel yucky for watching. Like this scene should not be funny to me right now. This is totally not be funny, but it is. It's hilarious.
And also, it's a good point about his imagination because so often he doesn't write these.
No.
He doesn't come up with them. Like case in point, Ichi the Killer started out as a comic, and then takes it and just runs with it in his own way. And it just gets, you're right. You don't know quite what's happening, why it's happening, and should I even be watching this?
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's funny. The one of the ones we talked about at the top, Lesson of the Evil. He adapted that. He wrote the screenplay for that. But that's one of the very, very few. And it's really the only horror one that he wrote.
Yeah. So always a favorite, Ichi the Killer from 2001, and that is number 2. And if you know Miike at all, then you know what is number 1, and that's from 1999, the classic Audition.
I don't think this is a big surprise to anybody. I mean, we've talked about this movie many times. It's a masterpiece.
Masterpiece.
And it's one of the great villains of all time. Asame. She's so terrifying. She's so terrifying. And she's so dainty and elegant. And, it sounds for all the world like she's saying, kitty, 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 kitty.
It does.
It's like,
it does.
Oh, she's not calling a kitty, though.
No.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so this one, you've got a widower who basically is using a friend who's in the movie business to help him get a date.
Right.
And they set up that's the audition.
Yeah.
And actually, these women don't know it, that they're auditioning for him, for this widower, to get a new mate, I guess. And wouldn't you know it, he picks her. And he lives to regret it.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, and you're so right about that, because she's so dainty. And that, starting right there, a lot of theories have come up about, is this movie, is there a feminist message in this movie? Is it talking about those types of stereotypes about how Japanese women should be and how they should behave? I don't know if you can find a lot of feminist message in this movie, but I know there are people that do talk about it as fighting against that, as this movie kind of shedding light on these certain mores that Japanese women are expected to behave in a certain way, and then you have this character fighting back against that.
I could see that, actually. I mean, I would definitely not call this a sexist film, because the people who are punished are male, and they're punished because this duplicity and this, controlling. I mean, it's fascinating. It's interesting. I don't know. Her behavior, you can't applaud exactly.
No. And then there's also, if you want to look at it through how they deal with the main male character, it could also be looked at as a way to frown upon the pressures that Japanese men have in their social status. He's worried about his social status, and he wants to find a woman, to replace his wife, and he's worried about his status, his business, his social status, and in a way you could maybe look upon it as a message about that.
Well, I think, for me, and I feel like most really good horror films, I don't know that they're necessarily taking a stance as much as they are unearthing social tensions like that. Because it's the tensions that cause you to anxiety while you're watching the movie.
Exactly.
So I don't know that they are trying to comment on anything other than the fact that this is a source of anxiety, and so let's mind that.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is one. This is a bit of a tidbit, since we just talked about this on the Stephen King podcast. But the very famous scene in this one with the foot, and I don't think I'm giving away too much here. Hopefully, no spoilers. In the original story that this was based on, both feet were gone.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it was a bit, from what I've read, Miike...
Because what is it she says? You can't go anywhere without your feet.
Yeah, in the original story, they're both gone, so you're really not going anywhere. But I guess I've read that Miike was quoted as saying he thought it was splitting the difference, he thought 2 feet was too far, so we'll just do the one. And man, what a classic scene that is.
There are so many in this movie. There are so many classic
all you got to
scenes.
do, there's the bag.
Yeah,
we've talked about the bag many times. But you just have to see that still photo of her with the wire.
Yeah.
Her holding the wire. And if you've seen the movie, you go, oh, no. Yeah. I think that's probably right. Just trying to envision both feet. I don't need to see that twice.
No.
Just seeing the 1 foot.
No.
But then here's the other thing, too, with Miike and his use of dreams. There's theories out there that most of the last part of this movie is a dream. I don't
find a lot of evidence to support that. But I'm fine. I love conflicting theories about films.
Well, there's the one scene, of course, where he wakes up and he goes to his foot. Grabs for his foot. But I'd probably agree with you. But I can see how, especially with this director, especially if he's somebody that's seen a lot of his movies, how you could go there and start looking for clues.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, it's funny, just like we were talking about a couple weeks ago, the Kubrick films, you can just talk about a Kubrick film like frame by frame by frame, every single one of them.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like most of Miike's films, you can do the same. He loads them with so much imagery and so many ideas, and they almost seem nonsensical and non sequitur, and you think, oh, it's just because he's nuts. But on the other hand, if you look closely, you think to yourself, well, maybe not, I mean, he is a master, and maybe they're all in here for one very specific reason. I feel like you can, if you can stomach them, I feel like you can watch Miike films like 100 times and still not know everything he's trying to say.
Yeah, and I think your point is well taken about maybe not so much to make concrete messages and concrete judgments, but just to use those types of themes to get at you a little bit
exactly.
more.
To
like
make
that.
you uncomfortable, because he really makes you uncomfortable, and not in a single direct way with the blood, because there's so much violence in almost all of his movies, so much violence. But that doesn't seem like it's enough. That there's undercurrent of humor that makes you feel sort of unsettled, that you are laughing, and also all of this blood is going on, and then there's usually a sexual tension that is unseemly. I mean, he just really throws a lot at you, but does it so beautifully.
Yes, and so often beautifully shot as well, as well as just put together. So number one on our Takashi Miike You So Fine countdown, it's Audition from 1999. So what do you think? You get some in the wrong order? You think others should be in there? Just overall conceptions, overall thoughts about Miike and his films. Let us know. Hit us up on Twitter. We're at Mad Wolf. Mad Wolf Columbus on Facebook. It's madwolf.com. A lot of ways to get a hold of us. Of course, you can always hit up the Golden Spiral Media website.
The lovely people who host our podcast and a bunch of other great podcasts like Triplecast, a lot of other great podcasts you can go to there. Or you can just go to iTunes if you want to go to iTunes, and you can rate us. Yeah. That would be cool.
Come on, that'd be sweet. So we look forward to seeing you if you can make it this coming Wednesday, the 11th. We're going to be at the Gateway Film Center for Fright Club Live, doing the podcast, showing the orphanage, giving away prizes, and talking about our favorite Spanish language horror movies. So that should be fun. Keep those suggestions coming for future podcasts.
That's right. We have some suggestions for what? David Lynch, David Cronenberg, other Davids, for Vincent Price and Val Lewton. So if they're Barbara Crampton, if there's an actor, an actress, a filmmaker that you feel like they deserve a full podcast, the full Takashi Miike treatment, if you will, throw us some ideas, because we're totally collecting them, because it will be fun.
All right. So we look forward to all that. This is the Fright Club podcast.
I'm Hope Madden.
And I'm George Wolf. And until next week,
stay frightful, my friends.